Yo, what's up guys? Today I want to talk about one of the best endgame Spiritborn builds for Diablo 4 Season 9, and it is a Crushing Hand Poison build. Now this build will let you clear tier 4 so easy without any mythics, no really strict gearing requirements, and I'm going to explain exactly how to play it, exactly how to gear it, and how the whole thing works. Okay, so what is the build and how does it work? Well, it's based around the Balazan's new unique that we get in Season 9, and what this does is it allows us to reflect our thorns as poison damage to all the enemies around us and increases our poison damage by up to 300%. So what we do is we stack as much thorns as possible, we stack as much poison damage as possible, and then we just reflect those thorns, deal tons of poison damage, and everything around us just melts. And the way we activate this skill and what the build's kind of based around is Crushing Hand. Now, Crushing Hand is a gorilla skill, and the reason I really like this is for two reasons. One is you punch the ground in kind of a shockwave that deals damage to everyone around you. So you have an AoE around you. You don't have a cone, you don't hit out in a certain direction. You just have a big AoE all around you, which you can increase with tempering. You can increase the size of this AoE. And then the second reason is every time we cast this ability, we gain a barrier, which makes us incredibly defensive. We can also then play into, deal more damage the more barrier you have. There's so many other things that we can do with a big barrier that makes this build just so tanky, so defensive, and so easy to play. Okay, so let's get into the details. I'm going to go over the skill tree, the Paragon Board, all that stuff, the seasonal abilities, all that sort of stuff. And then I'm going to talk a few other things that's going to help you get more damage and more defenses in this build. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's go over the skill tree, starting from the top. 2 points into any basic ability. It doesn't matter which. I went with Withering Fist. We don't use it. It's not on the bar. We just do that to get into the next section. The next section, Crushing Hand. Now, we don't 5 out of 5 this because we don't care about the damage from it. This is like the enabler. This is what we use to trigger the thorns reflection. Is what we use to get the barrier. So 1 out of 5, and then take enhanced and advantageous. Now the juice really comes here from enhanced. Crushing Hand grants a barrier of 10% of the damage it deals 2 seconds, up to 40% of your max life. Now we are constantly getting a barrier. We're constantly topping our barrier back up. So it's just really, really defensive, especially like as you're climbing the tiers, the torment levels. Then you can take this to also knock enemies down, which is good. It's a crowd control. It takes the pressure off a little bit. It's a good one to have. Then 3 out of 3 vigorous. Every cast a core skill, you increase your vigor duration by 15%. Really, really good. We don't have like the Ring of Starless Skies mythic or anything on this build. So extra resource generation is really useful. The more attack speed you have, the more you're throwing these out. So you really do need stuff like this. In the next section, we take two of these focus abilities. We take Vortex, and we do that to suck enemies in. Because we have this circular AoE around us, sucking them all in means we hit all the enemies at once. And, we want them in next to us so that we can reflect our thorns onto them. So, we want to get that. You want to take Enhanced to increase damage of your abilities, and then Crit Strikes with Vortex, reduce its cooldown. So again, we're just putting 1 point here and we're just using it to suck enemies in. Okay, now Toxic Skin. Now Toxic Skin doesn't make much sense on first glance, but we're using this because it enables this whole thorn build. So you want to put a point into here and it gives you a poison trail when you use it, but it has a passive element. You see there's an element, enemies that attack you are poisoned, and then there's an active element when you click the button that also leaves a poison trail. Now if we go down here and we get Enhanced, we increase the poisoning, and then if you get Replenishing, Toxic Skin passively increases thorn damage by 100%. Given that this entire build is about reflecting poison damage, we want to make sure we get this. Now, if you never ever press this, fine, you're still getting the passive thorn damage. So this is really, really good to have. Then we have a bunch of passives here. 3 points in Mirage, increased dodge, and then 3 points in Unrestrained Power, deal increased damage while unstoppable. Then we want to go 1 and 2 here to deal increased damage while vulnerable. If we had more points, we would, but we have a lot of passives in this build, so we don't really have the 3 points free. Down here, let's talk passives again. 1 point here, 3 points into Perseverance, gain additional damage reduction per stack of Resolve. Now, we will always be at Resolve cap. Because we're using Gorilla skills, because, we have Armored Hide, we will always be at, Resolve cap. If you're new to Spiritborn, the way this works is every stack of Resolve is 20% damage reduction. So, incredible. We're always going to have max of that. 1 point down here into the Guard, 3 points into Auspicious, which gives you 3% max life as barrier, even more barrier. And then down here, Bastion, gain thorns. While you have a barrier, your thorns are increased by 20%. So you see again, barrier, thorns, it's all playing together. This is you can see there's extra levels here from the items. They come from the unique pants. So the Balazan you get extra levels on Bastion just from having those. That's not like a really rare roll. Okay, let's talk about the other two abilities here, because these again have passive and active elements. So Armored Hide, passive, gain 1 resolve every 5 seconds. Perfect. Active, become unstoppable and gain block chance. Now, again, we only want to 1 point this because extra points just do cooldown. We don't really worry about that. Enhanced, every time you activate Armored Hide, you gain max resolve and increase your thorns. So again, another thing, when we click it, we gain more thorns. And then you can also take Reinforce to increase the block damage reduction, which is pretty nice. Okay, on counterattack, this again is really useful because of the passive side. Gain 10% dodge chance and automatically retaliate against close enemies. Now, this is useful because there's a thing in our Paragon board which we're going to talk to, and that is you gain thorns, the better your dodge chance. So basically, this is just additional thorns, which you might not realize on first glance. Now, if you 5 out of 5 this, you get 5% more dodge chance, but I just think there's better places to put those points because it's not, it's not massive. If you got loads more, it'd be worth it, but 5% for 4 more points doesn't really feel worth it. Then the active element is dodge all attacks. Okay, so counterattacks cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds per stack of ferocity, and because we go into the Jaguar Spirit Hall, we have like max ferocity, which is great. And then down here we get reinforced. Passively increases your crit strike damage for every close enemy, so we're pretty much always at 30% increased crit strike. Okay, next section, we just take a bunch of passives. 3 points in Resilient for increased max life, and then 1 point here just to trigger this for the knockdown. 3 points into Potent, hitting enemies increases the damage they take from you, and then Jaguar skills still increase crit strike damage per stack of ferocity. Fantastic. And then down here, we just go all in on the hunt, on the Jaguar ability, the Hunter. So 5 out of 5, this is just, we leap on an enemy and deal damage and trigger everything else. 5 out of 5 that. 1 point into this, overfills your ferocity by 2 stacks, which is attack speed and deal increased damage. And then down here, defeating an enemy while the hunt is present, resets its cooldown, which is amazing. And then we go all in here on these passives, which are tied to the ultimate. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but we want to go 3, 1, 1, 1, 3, 3. These ones are good because this gives you Supremacy, which is, every time you defeat an enemy, you start stacking up Supremacy, which is more damage. And then this one here is every time you cast an ultimate skill, the last Potency, Defense, or Focus skill prior can be cast 3 times for free. So if you cast something like Vortex, and then you cast your ultimate, you then get 3 more free casts of Vortex. So you can keep pulling enemies in. Similarly, if you want to use it with like counterattack or Toxic, something like that, you can do it that way. So it's really, really useful. And then for our key passive, we go Noxious Resonance, which is your crit strikes cause poisoning to burst, dealing 100% of the poison damage instantly. Now that's just massive because we never have to wait for poison to tick down. Every time poison hits, it's instantly popped for 108% damage. So that's the whole build. Okay, onto the Spirit Hall. It's really simple. We take double Jaguar. Now, if you have never played Spiritborn, the first ability we take transforms all of our abilities into a different thing. So if you were to pick Gorilla, all of our abilities would get the tag of Gorilla, even if they weren't Gorilla. Similarly, we pick Jaguar, all of our abilities get the tag of Jaguar. So everything we took in the skill tree that was like, your Jaguar abilities do this, is now everything. So that's really good. The main thing here, every 15th time you deal direct damage to an enemy, you unleash an additional strike of 42% of the damage you've dealt to them. So as we're like punching the ground with our crushing hand, we're going every 15th hit, which is just a couple of seconds, we then re-trigger another 42% of the damage. So this is more attack speed, makes this better and better and better. So huge. Then secondly, max ferocity increased by 2. This is just attack speed. The more ferocity you have, the more attack speed is just great. And like I say, they work well together because the higher your attack speed, the more you're hitting, the more you trigger this. Okay, let's talk about the aspects and the gear. And you can see my gear is nothing special. I don't even have a, Creator Affixed helmet. I don't have everything fully masterworked. No mythics. It's nothing wild. I'm going to show you on the build guide just 'cause it's much easier to show it that way. So let me pop that up here. So on the build guide, if we go over to this, you can see if we come down, all the gear is just easy to see. So I'll do this. There's going to be a link fully down below as well. And we can also go into the stats and see like what we want on each piece. So when it comes to the gear, let's first go through the uniques. This is a build that needs no mythics, but does need uniques. It needs 3 uniques and a 4th can be useful. So the things it needs is the Balazan's Pants. Each attack causes close enemies to, reflect your thorns and deal 100% as poison for 3 seconds. Every time you retaliate with thorns, you increase your poison for up to 300%. This is kind of like the build definer. Don't even start this build until you have this. Additionally, don't start until you have Razor Plate. Razor Plate has thorns as four, four elements of your gear are thorns. So you can see, like, if we jump over to here, you can see how this works. It just has thorns, 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 thorns. So you have like over 2,000 thorns just coming from that one piece of gear. So you want to make sure you have these two because this is a thorns build. Okay, then we want to get Loyalty's Mantle. While your Spirit Horde choices match, which they do, their bonuses are 100% more potent, which means we do more damage. And, you gain Vigor cost reduction, which means we can cast our abilities more. This is very, very important. I wouldn't run this build until you have this, because you're gonna use your core skill, the smash 2-3 times. You're gonna be out of Vigor and confused. So I'd get these 3 first, and then when you're like playing and you're getting onto like bosses and big packs of mobs in like tier 3 and above, torment 3 and above, you're gonna start running into more Vigor issues. You're gonna want this, the Ring of the Midnight Sun. Now, there's some good stuff on here, like cooldown reduction, ranks to Mirage. There's some good stuff, but the main thing is when you crit, gain the Vigor back that you've used over the last 2 seconds. This is massive. You definitely are going to feel this, and it's going to let you play all the way deep into Torment 4 with no mana issues. Now, my tip would be, if you are lucky enough to find a Ring of Starless Skies or craft one, you can replace this as it is a big upgrade, but you don't need it to play the build. This is all you need. Okay, now let's talk some of the legendary aspects that we want to be getting. So on the gloves, accelerating, crit strikes with core skills, increase your attack speed by up to 30%. You're going to feel that. We've spoken a lot about, I don't want to repeat myself, but we spoke a lot in the Jaguar Spirit Hall. The more attack speed, we're going to trigger that Jaguar effect more. So attack speed is very, very important. Then we want to go for the Duelist, increase ferocity by 5, which is again, more attack speed. It's all making sense. Then I'm going to leave off the weapon for now. If we come over to the other ring, every third crushing hand smashes an additional 10 times around you, which is extra attacks, which will trigger again more things. And then conceited aspect on the amulet, deal increased damage while you have a barrier. You will never not have a barrier. Every single second that you are alive, there will be a barrier on you. So, and this doesn't scale with barrier, it's just if you have a barrier. So that is pretty much a permanent 30% damage increase. Okay, now this is another big source of our damage. Planes Power. So the way this works is every time you lucky hit, there's a chance to create a mystic circle. Because we are hitting so much, it doesn't matter how low our lucky hit is. Because we're hitting like multiple times a second, you see the numbers fly up on screen. Like, we're constantly hitting, we're going to hit this every couple of seconds. So we're constantly going to be making these mystic circles. And the mystic circles are just pure damage increases. You increase your ferocity, which again increases attack speed, more damage, and increases your damage per stack while you remain within the circle. Now, it's going to, if this was like a leveling build, wouldn't make sense. But in endgame, as you start pushing like high torment levels, a lot of the gameplay is jumping into a pack of mobs and slowly wearing them down. That's kind of how, the mob's health HP just scales higher and higher. You are going to be standing inside circles for a while. So you will definitely feel this benefit, especially on like bosses, big packs of elites, things like that. Okay, now for the gear and the tempering. I don't want to tell you exactly what to find on your gear because it's going to be dependent on your character, your build, how things are looking. You want to try and hit your armor cap of 1,000 if you can. You want to get as much life as possible. You want to get as much dex as possible. You want to get attack speed where you can get attack speed. And on your amulet, it's good if you can find potent. That's pretty much everything you want. I've put it in here if you want to go through it all. But, it's based on your build. Like, how is your character looking? What do you need? Maybe you really need resistances. Try and find resistances. You can roll these at the occultist to try and get what you need to finish your build, but you can copy this if you need a reference. When it comes to tempering, I've wrote the tempers down here of what you want to be looking for. On offensive tempers, like on your weapon and on your amulet, I believe. Yeah, you want to be getting Mystic Circle potency. This increases everything we get from the Mystic Circle, which is great. On resource tempers, we want to be getting the Hunt cooldown reduction, so we can jump into packs more often and trigger all the attack speed bonuses more often. On the utility, you have a choice. So things like the gloves and the boots, for example, have utility. Now on these, you have 3 things to choose from. 1, I would go for increase the size of crushing hands. That means that big circle from our crushing hand is increased. Very, very important. Then you can either increase vortex size, which is probably what I would do. So you can jump into a pack, pull everything in, and then hit everything with your crushing hands. Or you can go for this here, increased armored hide thorn bonus, which is again, more thorns, more damage. Potentially, I'm jumping between trying them both out. They both feel pretty good, but go with which you think works best, vortex or armored hide bonus. But that's pretty much everything. On the weapon as well, you can get, crushing hand, chance to extra hit. So you trigger that Jaguar Haul more often. But that's all the gear. If you have any questions or if anything wasn't clear, let me know. But I've tried to keep it as detailed as possible. Okay, now let's talk about the seasonal powers. And I'm going to talk about this in 2 parts. I'm going to talk about the seasonal powers, the Horadric spellcraft, and then the jewels. So you can create jewels in Season 9, Horadric jewels that you put in your gear. And these actually go together significantly well. So it's important to talk about them both at the same time. So when we talk about the powers themselves, this is what I would go for. You kind of have a choice between damage. So something like Celestial Surge is massive AoE damage, or you go for something like Disintegrate, which has a very low cooldown, which means you can trigger your connected arcanas more. That's what I would go for in this build. I would go for Disintegrate, so you can trigger our abilities every 5 seconds. So go for that. For the things we put in, we obviously go for Poison, the Corrosive Vapor, because there's a poison build. And then I would go for these 3 here. I would go for the Jagged Bramble. You have a 50% chance to deal 300% of your Thorns damage, because again, it's a Thorns build. And then I would go for Invigorating Helix. Damage from your catalyst will fortify you, which is 15% damage reduction. And then I would go for Bottled Wind. Invoking your catalyst grants you a barrier to 50% of your life. Okay, now the reason we take these 2 here, it's not because they're, the best ones. I mean, this one is, but the reason we take this is because these are both tagged as denial. So you see here, they both have a denial tag. That means that when we craft our jewel, we can craft this jewel here. So if we go into the jewels and we go into the arcane ones, we have the Seal of Denial. If you have 2 or more Arcana from the School of Denial, gain 30% more barrier, which is perfect in this build, Fortify, and Thorns. So this is probably one of the biggest effects we can have on this character. So that's why we take 2 denials. Additionally, the reason that we are going into our ability here and we are tagging our Disintegrate to our ultimate ability, we're tagging it to the Hunter. So, what you do here is you place this where you want it to reflect the ability. So if you had, the Hunter on your left click, you would put this on your left click kind of thing. So that's why we have it tagged to the Hunter. The reason we want it tagged to the Hunter, not to Crushing Hand, which would make more sense, is because of a jewel. So if we go into the jewels again, and then we go into craft jewels, you see here on Myriad Stone, after you cast your ultimate skill, if it is an ultimate, gain 30% attack speed for 10 seconds. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense of why we're playing things the way we are. The final thing I would go for here, the final jewel I would go for, so the first one would be, Myriad Stone. The second one would be the Denial one, the Seal of Denial. Now, the final thing I would get here would be Liminal Echo. If you would take fatal damage, instead you become invulnerable for 3 seconds. This can occur every 75 seconds. You're going to feel it, it's going to save you, and it's going to make the game feel so much smoother. It makes the game feel a lot less punishing and a lot easier early on when you still don't have the gear where you want it. I'm still playing, I'm still leveling this, I'm not even at armor cap, and I'm really not getting wiped out that often. So yeah, that's how I would set your jewels up. That's how I would set your spellcraft up. Okay, now let's talk about the Paragon Board. So on a high level of this, we want to be going Bane in the start board, Spiky Skin and Hubris on the second board, then Sapping and Ritual on the third, Vicious, Shield and Colossal, and then down to Infighter and Revenge to finish off. That's how I'd set up the 5 boards with the 5 glyphs. So now let's go in more detail. So from the start, we want to be looking at down here, go down both sides to get the max life and the other things that come along with it. Go up to the middle, Bane, and then you want to get all of the strength around it to increase our poison damage. So, you want to get all of the different strength around it. You want to get the damage and the damage to elites, all that kind of stuff. Then onto the next board, the Spiny Skin. On here, there are a lot of really good things that if you don't have the mythic ring, the Starless Skies, you are going to not hit your cap of resistance to all elements. So you want to be grabbing all these things, 3% resistance to all elements. So go and get all the resistances on this screen. Wherever there's max life and thorns, get that as well. On the legendary node, Spiny Skin, when you use a cooldown, gain 35% thorns is massive. Then we put in Hubris, which gives magic nodes in range a bonus, and you gain thorns based on your dodge, which benefits our counterattack and all of the dodge that we take. When we talk about magic nodes, we're talking about these 5% thorns, 5% thorns, 5% thorns. Up here, we've got damage. So this is a really good one to place this. Then we come along to board 3, Sapping. Sapping is down here. When you cast 3 of the same ability, you restore 15% vigor and get 30% increased damage. We're going to trigger that every single time it can be triggered. It will be triggered. Resource regeneration is really useful. Life is really good. Attack speed is really good. Going up to here, we go for Ritual. Every 5 intelligence, you gain Mystic Circle potency. Mystic Circle is massive. We've talked about how important that is. So get all of the intelligence in this little circle and then, you know, power it up to get increased damage. Coming along to the next one, Viscous Shield. You want to come at it this way. You want to get the Colossal. Every 5 strength, you deal increased damage with Gorilla Skills, and you deal 2% increased damage for each stack of Resolve. We always are, you know, Resolve capped. I think it's 8. So that's like 16% permanent damage, which is fantastic. Up here, there's Barrier Generation, which is very important in this build. Down here, we've got the Viscous Shield. 1% increased damage for each 3% of your max life you have as a barrier, which is why we take so much life, and it's why we take so much barrier generation. More damage as well as defenses. Damage reduction while you have a barrier is great as well. And then finally down here, you want to put it this way so you can get straight into the legendary node. When you dodge or block, gain attack speed and increase damage. Run it down here for life and resistances. More resistances. Down here, we've got more dodge. And then finally, we get the glyph down here, Revenge. Grants bonus to all rare nodes, and dealing Thorns damage increases damage they take to us. The rare nodes are damage, and then down here, damage. So that's what I would go for. Have any other questions? Anything you would change? Let me know down below in the comments. But that's the entire build. I've made this long because, one, this build is long. This build is not as simple as just throw on everything that has an eagle and deal damage. It's quite complicated in how we set up the damage. It's quite complicated in how we get so defensive that we just never fail. We just go in and just tank everything, even in Torment 4. So yeah, you might be having moments where, you know, you're going in and you're going, I'm not dealing any damage. Why? Or I keep getting one shot. So hopefully I've explained things well enough that this does help. If it does, do consider subscribing to the channel. I try to make these as detailed as possible. So if it has helped, do subscribe for more builds always on the way. And if you have any questions, if anything doesn't make sense, if you're still having problems, let me know and I will do my best to help. Thank you for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.